"Step away from my pool, Victoria." The words came out sharper than I intended, slicing through the humid afternoon air. Her head turned slowly, that rehearsed HOA president's smile still frozen on her face. Sunglasses hid her eyes, but I could see her reflection in the blue water, tight posture, perfect hair, a clipboard tucked under her arm like a weapon. Around her, 3 neighborhood teens splashed in my pool, loud, careless, oblivious to the steam rolling off my patience. "Oh, Anthony, do not be ridiculous," she said, tilting her head. "We are all part of Maplewood Heights. Shared spaces build community." I laughed once, low, humorless. "Shared spaces? You mean the fenced yard attached to my mortgage? The one you keep breaking into?" Her lips pursed. "No need to be rude. It is just a misunderstanding." "It is the 3rd one this week," I said flatly. "Misunderstandings do not happen with a key." The smirk faltered. She glanced at the gate, where a shiny silver duplicate of my lock dangled from a teen's wrist. My jaw clenched. "Take your kids and go. Now." For a moment, the only sound was the filter humming. Then she flipped her hair, waved lazily at the teens, and started toward the gate. "You should really lighten up, Anthony," she said. Nobody likes a hostile neighbor. Hostile. That word lingered like chlorine in my throat. When I bought this house, hostility was the last thing I wanted. After 25 years in a cubicle, I had traded deadlines for silence. Maplewood Heights had promised serenity, smooth sidewalks, identical mailboxes, and smiling strangers who looked like they practiced smiling. The first few weeks were heaven. Early mornings by the pool, the smell of coffee and cut grass, the sound of nothing but wind. Peace was finally measurable, one heartbeat, one breath at a time, until Victoria moved in next door. She was the kind of woman the suburbs worship: sharp bob haircut, expensive perfume, and a talent for pretending authority was kindness. Within days, she had announced herself as HOA president, delivering pamphlets about community standards like commandments carved in beige. I nodded, smiled, played along. You do not pick fights with people who have clipboards. You just hope they never notice you. She noticed me. It started with her children. One Saturday morning, I stepped outside to find them cannonballing into my pool like it was a public park. Water splashed against the deck, soaking the grill I had just cleaned. My first instinct was not anger. It was disbelief. "Excuse me!" I called. They froze mid-splash, guilt spreading slower than ripples. The girl giggled nervously. "Mom said we could swim." "It is community property." I almost dropped my mug. "I am sorry." "What?" That is when Victoria appeared, like a magician revealing the final act. Big sunglasses, floral dress, phone pressed to her ear. She waved dismissively at her kids. "Oh, Anthony, I was just about to text you. Hope you do not mind." They got a little excited. "Such a beautiful pool." "It is private," I said, pointing to the locked gate. She smiled wider. "Of course. I will remind them for next time." Next time. Those 2 words were a red flag wrapped in politeness. I should have drawn the line right there. Instead, I laughed awkwardly and told myself she meant well. In Maplewood Heights, confrontation was the only sin. The next time came fast. 3 days later, music echoed through my yard. Pop songs, laughter, the wet slap of diving bodies. I opened the gate, and there they were again. This time, Victoria was not apologizing. She was lounging on my chair, sunglasses perched like a crown, drink in hand. "Anthony," she called. "We are just wrapping up." "The kids adore your pool." "My pool," I repeated, barely keeping my voice steady. "Oh, do not be so territorial," she said, waving her manicured hand. "We are all family here. Family." I stared at the margarita glass on my deck, the crumbs of chips on my table, and something cold settled in my stomach. This was not ignorance. It was entitlement, dressed as charm. Over the next week, my sanctuary turned into a playground. Wet footprints, half-eaten snacks, the faint smell of sunscreen hanging in the air long after they left. One afternoon, her husband Doug sat near the pool, beer in hand. shirt unbuttoned halfway like he was on vacation. "Hey neighbor," he grinned. "You really nailed this setup. HOA should make you design the community center. Or maybe build one somewhere else," I said. He laughed, completely missing the point. People like Doug did not understand tension until it hit them in the face. I tried politeness, new locks, friendly notes, gentle texts. Every response from Victoria was sugar-coated poison. "Oh, Anthony, you are overreacting. We are neighbors, not strangers." She used neighbor the way predators use friend. Then came the letter, a thick envelope sealed with the HOA emblem, formal and smug. Notice of violation, aesthetic disruption, and excessive noise. My so-called offense? Pool activity inconsistent with community harmony? It was signed, of course, by Victoria Whitmore, president. I laughed out loud. She had officially declared war, using stationery as ammunition. That evening, I walked across the street and knocked. She opened the door with a look of surprise, so fake it deserved an award. "Oh, Anthony. Did you get the notice?" "I did," I said evenly. "Funny though, I did not see the section about trespassing in your rules." She blinked. "Do not be dramatic. We are just keeping things peaceful." "Peaceful," I repeated. "Right." Her perfume filled the doorway as she smiled again, a wolf in pearls. "Good night, Anthony." That night, for the first time, I did not sleep. I sat by the pool watching the ripples distort my reflection. The water looked calm, but under the surface, the filter hissed and churned. So did I. By morning, I had a plan. Not a loud one, not a violent one, something cleaner. I started recording. Every splash, every trespass, every word. I installed hidden cameras disguised as garden lights, a motion sensor on the gate, even a timestamp recorder that pinged my phone whenever someone entered the yard. My laptop became a catalog of her arrogance, dates, times, faces, proof. It was not about revenge, not yet. It was about building a wall made of facts. But revenge has a way of growing in the dark. A week later, I overheard her bragging to another neighbor while I watered the lawn. "Anthony's place adds so much value," she said loudly. "Honestly, we should consider it communal space. Everyone benefits." Communal, that word again. I tightened my grip on the hose until water sprayed the concrete in a sharp arc. She met my eyes over the fence, smiling like we were sharing a joke only she understood. "Morning," she sang. I smiled back. "Morning." Inside, I was already building something stronger than a fence. Resolve. That evening, I went through the footage. Dozens of clips. Her kids climbing the fence, Doug carrying coolers, friends setting up lawn chairs like it was a resort. I organized everything by date and angle. The screen glowed in the dark, painting my face in blue light. Each frame was a confession, but collecting evidence was not enough. I wanted her to stop, to feel the boundary she kept crossing. So, I started reading the HOA bylaws. Every dull, bureaucratic page. Property access, private amenities, liability. If she wanted to play by the book, I would use the book like a hammer. Days turned into weeks. Every time I stepped outside, I felt eyes on me. Curtains shifting, whispers behind fences. Maplewood Heights thrived on gossip, and Victoria fed it like oxygen. Soon, the narrative had flipped. I was the uptight neighbor, the man hoarding community joy. It was genius, in a sick way. She did not just invade my space, she rewrote the story. That is when I realized logic would not beat her, only consequence would. One night, I stood by the pool under the porch light. The surface was still, reflecting the stars like tiny shards of glass. I could hear faint laughter from her house, the kind that only bullies share after getting away with something. I looked down at my reflection and whispered, "Enough." The next morning, she waved at me while watering her roses. "Lovely weather, is it not?" she said sweetly. I raised my coffee cup, smiling back. "Perfect day for a swim," I replied. Her grin widened. She thought she had won. But peace, I was learning, is not free. It costs preparation, patience, and sometimes a little creativity. By that point, I had already begun the part she would never see coming, the quiet kind of revenge, the kind that does not need shouting, just timing. I cleaned the filters, adjusted the chemical balance, made everything perfect. To anyone else, it looked like maintenance. To me, it was preparation. When I looked at my reflection in the still blue water, I did not see the tired man who had moved here searching for calm. I saw someone ready to take it back. And across the fence, Victoria smiled like the queen she believed she was. She had no idea her kingdom was built on borrowed ground, and I was done being her subject. I did not sleep that night. Not out of guilt, out of anticipation. By morning, I had the entire plan mapped out in my head. Quiet, methodical, impossible to trace. The kind of plan that does not leave fingerprints, just lessons. I had spent weeks watching Victoria weaponize politeness. Now I would turn her own playbook against her. No yelling, no threats, just patience and precision. The first step was not sabotage, it was performance. I had to make her believe she had won. So, that morning, I waved. I even complimented her roses. "They are looking great this year, Victoria." She blinked, surprised by the civility, then smiled like a queen accepting tribute. "Thank you, Anthony. Maybe you are finally learning how community works." Yeah, I thought. Community, sure. For 3 days, I kept up the act. I waved at Doug, chatted with neighbors, even nodded during her self-congratulatory HOA meeting on the front lawn. The gossip shifted again. I was coming around. Victoria loved it. Her control fed on perception, and I was giving her the illusion of it. Then came Thursday, delivery day. A plain brown package, no markings, light as a loaf of bread. Inside, 3 sealed pouches of fine white powder labeled "harmless pool prank, non-toxic." I had done the research twice. It was not poison, not even close, just a harmless chemical that caused mild itching and redness when exposed to water for long periods. Annoying, but safe. As I held the bag up to the light, it shimmered faintly, the color of irony. Saturday arrived like clockwork. Perfect weather. Bright, cloudless, the kind of day that screams pool party. At 6 a.m., the neighborhood slept. Birds chattered lazily. Sprinklers hissed. I walked into my backyard with a coffee in one hand and that small brown box in the other. The air was still cool, damp from the night. My reflection stared back at me from the pool, calm, focused, ready. I tore the first pouch and sprinkled it into the water, then another, letting the filtered jets pull it through the system. The surface shimmered as it dissolved, invisible, harmless, patient, just like me. When it was done, I took a long sip of coffee and whispered to myself, "Your move, Victoria." By noon, the calm broke. Music, laughter, the sharp screech of metal chairs scraping on my deck. My pulse did not rise. It steadied. I peeked through the blinds. There they were. Victoria, Doug, half the neighborhood, their sunglasses gleaming, drinks clinking. Kids dove into the water, splashing, screaming, echoing off the fence like victory chants. For 10 minutes, everything looked normal. Then came the first scream, a high-pitched, piercing sound that sliced through the music. A woman clawed at her arms, red blotches rising fast. Another man shouted, thrashing toward the edge, "Something is in the water!" Kids were crying, scratching, stumbling out of the pool like it was lava. I stepped outside just as the chaos hit full throttle. The air reeked of sunscreen and panic. Victoria spun around, her hair plastered to her face, mascara streaking down like war paint. "You!" she screamed. "You poisoned us! Anthony!" I held up my iced tea and took a slow sip. "You mean the pool you broke into again?" Her jaw dropped. "I am calling the police!" "Perfect," I said calmly. "Maybe they will explain what private property means." She shouted something I did not catch over the noise, probably an accusation, maybe a curse, but I did not care. For months, she had filled this yard with her laughter, her noise, her entitlement. Today, she filled it with consequence. Sirens echoed down Maplewood Drive within minutes, red and blue flashing across the water. The neighborhood came alive. Curtains fluttered, phones lifted, whispers carried. It felt cinematic, like the final act of a movie I had been forced to star in. When the cruisers stopped at my curb, 2 officers stepped out, scanning the scene. Half-dressed partygoers itching and yelling, Victoria shouting, me sitting calmly by the patio table. Glass of tea, sweating in the sun. "Officers!" she shrieked, storming forward. "He poisoned us! He put something in that pool!" They looked at me. I stayed seated. "Afternoon," I said, voice steady. "Might want to ask them why they were in my yard." The taller officer frowned. "Sir, this your property?" "Yes," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "Deed, title, fence line. Everything inside that gate is private." He flipped through it, nodded once. "All right." Victoria pointed frantically toward the pool. "He is lying. We are all part of the HOA. This is shared space." The other officer raised an eyebrow. "Mom, it is attached to his house. It is visible from other homes," she insisted. "That makes it community property under HOA ordinance." Even the officer had to suppress a laugh. "That is not how that works." I leaned back in my chair, sipping my drink. Tried explaining that months ago. One of the guests, a red-faced man scratching his arms raw, shouted, "My skin is on fire!" The officer turned back to me. "Sir, did you add anything to the water recently?" "Just standard chlorine," I said. "Same every Saturday morning. You can test it if you would like." They did. Within minutes, the results came back clear. No toxins, no unusual chemicals, nothing but standard maintenance. The silence that followed was glorious. Victoria stood frozen, dripping, trembling, her authority evaporating faster than the water on the pavement. "You planned this," she hissed. I shrugged. "You planned the party." Something broke behind her eyes. Before anyone could move, she lunged forward and slapped my shoulder, more panic than power, but enough to make the officer step in. "Mom, that is assault," the tall one said firmly, grabbing her wrist. "He provoked me," she yelled, twisting. "Did not look that way," he replied, cuffing her as her husband shouted her name. Doug stood helplessly, sunburned and pale. "Vic, stop, please." She ignored him, glaring at me over her shoulder. "You think this is over, Anthony? You will regret this." I smiled. "Already regretted letting you swim." The officer opened the cruiser door. She tried to protest again, but her voice cracked. Cameras flashed from driveways. Kids watched from behind fences. The once invincible president of Maplewood Heights HOA, handcuffed, dripping, humiliated, was driven away under the afternoon sun. Doug lingered, scratching at his arm, eyes downcast. "Look, Anthony, I did not mean for it to go this far." "Neither did I said evenly. "But here we are." He nodded, wordless, and walked away. The cops packed up, neighbors whispered, and slowly the chaos dissolved. Only the hum of the pool filter remained, calm, steady, indifferent. I sat back down, took another sip of tea, and smiled to myself. Months of harassment, noise, trespassing, gone in an afternoon. But I knew Victoria. She was not done. People like her never are. They would rather burn everything down than admit they lost. That evening, the HOA group chat exploded. I did not have to check to know what they were saying. Half the neighborhood had seen it. HOA president arrested at neighbor's pool. I could practically hear her reputation unraveling one text at a time. By sunset, I replayed the footage, every second captured from 4 angles. Trespassing, property damage, assault, ironclad. For the first time since I had moved into Maplewood Heights, my house was quiet again. The pool glowed faintly under the porch light, still blue, mine. And as I leaned back in my chair, the thought hit me. Peace does not come from avoiding conflict. Sometimes it is earned, one documented trespass at a time. But something told me this was not the end. Victoria was not the kind of person who disappeared quietly. She was the kind that came back. and next time, I would be ready. The silence after the sirens faded felt strange, not peaceful, not yet. It was the kind of silence that hums, heavy and uncertain, like the air right before a storm. By the time I sat down that night, the footage was already uploading to my cloud. 4 angles, crystal clear, audio synced, Victoria's voice, screaming, accusing, collapsing under her own lies, replayed through my speakers. I did not smile. Not yet. Relief was not peace. Peace had to last longer than a day. The next morning, the neighborhood woke up to chaos. I had not even left my porch before my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts, emails, notifications from the HOA forum, screenshots, gossip, speculation. Did you see what happened? She actually hit him! The cops cuffed her in front of the kids. Maplewood Heights had turned into a reality show overnight. I did not respond to any of it. I just watched the view across the street, her pristine driveway now empty, her perfect hedges drooping in the sun. For months, she had been the loudest voice in the neighborhood. Now, even the wind seemed to hesitate near her house. By noon, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. I was not invited, of course, but I did not need to be. The sound carried. Half the board lived within earshot. Voices rose, muffled but tense. The word misconduct floated out the window like smoke. I smiled faintly. Accountability had finally arrived in Maplewood Heights. Later that day, an email landed in my inbox. Incident under review. HOA board statement pending. I did not open it. I already knew what it said. Bureaucracies always take the scenic route to justice. That night, I walked out to the pool. The water glowed under the porch light, perfectly calm, like none of it had ever happened. I leaned on the railing, listening to the faint hum of crickets. For the first time in months, my heartbeat matched the rhythm of my yard again. But people like Victoria do not vanish. They linger, in whispers, in paperwork, in poison ink letters. 3 days later, one of those letters showed up in my mailbox. Plain white envelope, no return address, HOA emblem printed in the corner. I tore it open and laughed, loud enough for the birds to scatter. Pending HOA investigation. Misuse of chemicals and unsafe pool operations. Cease use until further notice. No signature, no authority, just her. Her tone was unmistakable, self-righteous and perfumed with control. I crumpled the letter and tossed it into the trash. That should have been the end of it, but Maplewood Heights was not built on reason, it was built on gossip. And Victoria, even disgraced, still had her followers. For a week, whispers rippled through the street. People slowed down as they passed my driveway. Some nodded politely, others avoided eye contact. The same neighbors who had watched her get arrested now debated whether I had gone too far. I could have defended myself, explained everything, but that is not how you win here. The moment you start explaining, you lose control of the narrative. Victoria had taught me that lesson well. So instead, I smiled. I waved. I acted exactly like a man with nothing to hide. And while they whispered, I planned. Because if she wanted to make me the villain, I would be the most respectable villain they had ever seen. I spent the next few nights online, researching local property laws and small event permits. I found what I needed in the fine print. Private property could host gatherings under 10 guests without HOA approval, as long as it was not open to the public. That clause, probably written by Victoria herself, became my favorite sentence in the English language. I snapped new photos of the pool, the polished tiles, the soft glow of the lights under the water, the string lamps I had hung around the deck. Then I submitted them to a local event listing website. Private backyard for small photo shoots or private gatherings, peaceful and secure. Within days, I had my first booking. Saturday morning, a young couple pulled up in a van with a photographer. They were polite, quiet, grateful. They asked where to set up, stayed off the grass, and even offered to pay extra for electricity. As they unpacked their camera gear, I caught movement across the street, curtains shifting. Victoria's house. She was back. Even from a distance, I could tell it was her. Same posture, same arrogance, hiding behind new sunglasses. Doug stood beside her, arms crossed, like a man who had already given up. The couple posed by the pool, laughing softly as the photographer snapped away. I leaned on the railing, sipping my coffee, waiting. The screen door slammed across the street. Here we go. She marched across the asphalt, heels clicking like a metronome of fury. "Anthony!" she barked. "What is this?" I raised an eyebrow. "You will have to be more specific." "This," she waved at the couple, "the camera, the pool. You are running a business out of your property. That is against HOA zoning rules." "Actually," I said calmly, "it is not." Section 3A, paragraph 2. Private events under 10 people, no commercial signage, no issue. Her mouth opened, then closed again. "That is ridiculous." "You wrote it," I said, smiling. For a moment she looked like she might combust. Then she turned to the photographer. "You cannot be here. I am the HOA president. Former president," I corrected. The photographer hesitated, then glanced at me. "We are good here, right?" "Perfectly legal," I said. "You are fine." Victoria's jaw clenched. "You are mocking me, Anthony. You are turning this neighborhood into a circus." "No," I said. "You already did that. I am just selling tickets." She sputtered, her face flushing deep red. Doug tugged at her arm, whispering something, but she shook him off. "Enjoy your little game," she snapped. "It will not last." "Neither did your presidency," I said quietly. That stopped her cold. She glared at me one last time, then stormed back toward her house. The photographer muttered, "Yikes," under his breath. I grinned. Welcome to Maplewood Heights. The session went perfectly. When they left, they thanked me and even left a 5-star review online. Beautiful location, respectful host. 2 more bookings came in by nightfall. By Monday, my backyard had become something else. Not a pool, not a battlefield, but a quiet business. Legitimate, clean, and entirely out of Victoria's control. And that, more than anything, drove her insane. Every time a car parked outside my gate, I could see her blinds twitch. Every time someone laughed in my yard, she would appear on her porch, pretending to water her dead roses. Her power was slipping, and she could feel it. Then came the final blow. The HOA board announced a special meeting, official removal of Victoria Whitmore from all leadership roles. The notice was signed by 5 members, the same 5 who once followed her every rule. I did not attend the meeting. I did not have to. By the end of the day, word spread. Unanimous vote, effective immediately. Victoria had been dethroned. That evening, I found a small envelope taped to my door. No return address again. But this one was not threatening. Just one sentence, handwritten in shaky ink. "You think you have won. You have not." I held it up to the porch light, read it twice, then laughed. Because yes, I had. But it was not about victory anymore. It was about balance. I had spent months watching her twist the idea of community into a weapon. Now, I had turned it back into something real. The neighbors were talking again, not gossiping, but connecting. People smiled when they passed my driveway. Mrs. Jenkins even brought over cookies to celebrate your patience. Funny thing about power, once it breaks, people remember who they are without it. A week later, Victoria's house went dark. Curtains drawn, car gone. Rumor had it she was selling, or maybe staying with family out of state. I did not ask. That night, I walked out to the pool again. The water shimmered under the moonlight, soft and still. I could hear faint laughter from down the street, real laughter this time, the kind that does not hide guilt. For months, I had dreamed of silence. But this quiet filled with warmth, with peace, was better. I set down my drink, took a slow breath, and whispered, "Boundaries, Victoria." That is all it ever was. And in the reflection of that still blue water, for the first time since I had moved to Maplewood Heights, I saw exactly what I had fought for. Not revenge, not dominance, just the right to be left alone. The war was over, or so I thought. Peace never lasts long in Maplewood Heights. It comes in brief moments, a quiet evening, a calm breeze, the faint reflection of porch lights on water, and then the chaos finds a way back in. 2 weeks after the HOA dethroned Victoria, life almost felt normal again. I worked from home, hosted 2 more private photo shoots, waved to neighbors who used to look through me. The air felt lighter. Even the pool seemed cleaner, like the water itself was relieved. Then, one morning, I opened my door and froze. She was standing in my driveway. Sunglasses, clipboard, that same weaponized smile. "Good morning, Anthony," she said, voice sugar sweet. "We need to talk about your business operations." I blinked once, twice, making sure she was real. "You are trespassing again, Victoria." "Actually," she said, tapping the clipboard, "I am here on behalf of the community. Multiple residents have complained that you are turning your property into a commercial venue." I laughed under my breath. "Multiple residents? You mean you and Doug?" Her jaw tightened, but she did not flinch. "Do not get smart. You are in violation of HOA zoning guidelines. You cannot just rent your home like a circus." I stepped forward until there were only a few feet between us. "I did not write those rules, Victoria. You did. 10 guests or fewer. Private use. Remember?" Her smile cracked. I could almost hear it. "You think you are clever," she hissed. "But you have made a fool of yourself. Everyone is talking about you, about us." "I do not care what they say," I replied. "I just want you off my property." Her nostrils flared, and for a second, the mask slipped. "You humiliated me, Anthony. You made me look weak. You did that on your own." The silence that followed was tight, coiled like a spring. Then, before I could react, she slapped me. Hard. The sound echoed off the siding, sharp and clean. My head snapped sideways, cheek burning. I stared at her, stunned not by the pain, but by the sheer stupidity. And then I heard it, a voice from behind the fence. "Mom," a man said, calm but firm. "Put your hands where I can see them." I turned. The tall police officer from the pool incident stood there, uniform pressed, expression unreadable. He held a folder in one hand. "I was just dropping this off, Mr. Lewis," he said. Guess my timing is perfect. Victoria froze, hand half raised, eyes wide. "Officer," she began. He provoked me. "I watched the whole thing," he interrupted. "That is assault." Her confidence evaporated instantly. "This is not what it looks like," she stammered. "He is. Turn around, ma'am." When the handcuffs clicked, the sound was almost musical. Doug came running from across the street, face pale, tie loose. "Vic, what are you doing?" "She hit me," I said quietly. He stopped mid-step, the truth landing like a brick. "Oh, for God's sake." The officer read her rights as the neighbors began to gather again. Curtains moved, phones lifted, history repeated. It was surreal, like watching the same scene play twice, but slower, heavier. Victoria's sunglasses slipped down her nose, revealing eyes wild with humiliation. As they led her to the cruiser, she twisted in the officer's grip, voice trembling. "You think this makes you better than me?" I met her gaze. No, just quieter. The car door shut, and the sound carried down the block like the final bell of a fight no one wanted but everyone watched. Doug stood there, deflated, running a hand through his thinning hair. "She is not well, Anthony." "You have to understand that." "I do," I said softly. "That is why I documented everything." He sighed, nodded, and walked away. The officer lingered a moment longer. "She will be booked and released," he said. "But between us, the DA's office is looking into her HOA finances. Someone sent them quite a bit of evidence." I raised an eyebrow. "Anonymous tip?" He smiled faintly. "Something like that." When he left, the street went quiet again. The whole neighborhood exhaled. That night, I sat by the pool with a beer in hand, staring at the reflection of the moon. The air smelled clean, sharp, like rain had just passed. I thought about everything that had happened, the trespassing, the chaos, the letters, the screaming, and for the first time, none of it felt heavy. It felt done. But people like Victoria do not vanish. They haunt the places they have tried to control. And in a way, that is what she had become, a ghost of her own empire, trapped in the house across the street, shouting at an audience that had stopped listening. Days passed. No more HOA letters. No more knocking. The quiet was almost unsettling. Then one morning I found a note taped to my mailbox, handwritten, shaky, nothing like her usual perfection. Anthony, I am leaving Maplewood Heights. I never hated you. I just hated losing control. Take care of your pool. It is a beautiful thing. Victoria. I read it twice, then folded it carefully and set it on my counter. For a moment, I just stood there, trying to feel something other than relief. By afternoon, I saw her SUV packed full of boxes. Doug loaded the last one into the trunk. No police, no shouting, no audience. Just the sound of car doors closing and an engine turning over. When she drove off, she did not look back. Doug stayed behind for a few days, cleaning up what was left. Wilted plants, unpaid bills, forgotten mail. He looked lighter, like someone stepping out of a storm. One evening, he stopped by with a manila envelope. HOA letter, he said, handing it over. From the board. You will want to see this. Inside was a formal thank you letter for your assistance in providing evidence that led to uncovering significant financial misconduct under former President Whitmore. In other words, embezzlement. I chuckled. Guess karma does audits now. Doug smiled weakly. She was obsessed with control. I think she thought if she managed everyone else's lives, hers would feel less empty. Did it work? I asked. He shook his head. No. It just made her smaller. That night, I poured a drink and stood on my deck, watching the water glow under the porch light. The ripples shimmered across the surface like tiny fragments of memory. Loud days, slammed gates, police sirens fading into quiet. It was all over now. Or so I hoped, because sometimes peace does not announce itself. It just arrives, sits beside you, and waits for you to notice. As the night settled over Maplewood Heights, I whispered to no one in particular. All that chaos, all that noise, just because someone could not take a no. The wind rustled through the hedges, and for the first time in a long while, the sound did not make me tense. It sounded like freedom. The next morning, I added one final touch to my backyard, a small wooden sign nailed beside the gate, painted by hand in black letters. Private pool, keep out. Especially you, Victoria. The neighbors loved it. Even Doug cracked a laugh when he saw it. That laugh, honest and tired, echoed through the quiet neighborhood like a closing chapter. Maybe, finally, Maplewood Heights could rest, and so could I. You never really know how quiet a place can get until the storm ends. For weeks after Victoria left, Maplewood Heights felt like a ghost town painted in sunlight. Same perfect lawns, same painted fences, but something underneath had shifted. The noise that once filled the air, the gossip, the fake smiles, the HOA newsletters that read like commandments, all gone. People waved now, real waves, not the kind that hide judgment. They lingered to chat, asked about my photo sessions, complimented the garden. It felt strange at first, to be seen without suspicion. I had spent so long defending my boundaries that I had forgotten what peace felt like when it was not a fight. But it did not come easy. Peace never does. A month passed. One evening, I found myself sitting by the pool again. Same chair, same hum of the filter, same reflection of porch lights trembling across the water, but everything else felt different. The pool did not feel like a battleground anymore. It felt like what it was always meant to be. Mine. The faint smell of chlorine mixed with jasmine from the hedges. Crickets filled the silence. Somewhere down the street, someone laughed. Not the hollow, mocking kind I had grown used to, but soft, warm, human. For the first time in a year, I breathed in and did not feel the weight pressing against my chest. That is when I realized peace is not quiet. It is the absence of fear. One afternoon, Doug stopped by again. He looked older, but lighter. The lines on his face had softened. "Place looks good," he said, glancing around. Victoria used to call it the neighborhood's crown jewel. I smiled faintly. Yeah. She tried to take it, too. He chuckled softly, then sighed. She is in therapy now. Staying with her sister in Arizona, I think losing everything finally forced her to look inward. I did not say anything. Part of me wanted to hate her forever. Another part just wanted her to heal, far away from here. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small envelope. "She asked me to give you this." Inside was a folded piece of paper, neat handwriting, careful, controlled. "Anthony, you were right about boundaries. I did not respect them because I did not have any myself. The HOA, the rules, they made me feel important, needed, but I was just afraid of fading into the background. I hope you keep your peace. You earned it. Victoria." I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. "Guess she finally understood," Doug said quietly. "Maybe," I said, "but sometimes understanding comes too late." After he left, I sat there thinking about how strange people can be. We fight to control what is not ours. We cling to power that never mattered. And when it all collapses, we call it tragedy, when really, it is just gravity pulling us back where we belong. For months, I had thought revenge would fix everything. But standing there, looking at my reflection ripple in the pool, I realized it had not fixed me. It had revealed me. I had become as obsessed as she was, only with defense instead of domination. And now, with the fight over, I finally had to face the quiet man I had become. The HOA eventually disbanded. Officially, it merged with a regional committee, but everyone knew the truth. No one wanted another Victoria. The neighbors took responsibility for their own homes again. Kids rode bikes down the street without someone measuring the noise level. The new president was a retired firefighter named Ray, calm, humble, allergic to drama. He stopped by once to introduce himself. "Heard you had a rough time here," he said, shaking my hand. "Nothing worth repeating," I said. He smiled. "Well, if you ever want to come to a cookout, no clipboards, I promise." I actually laughed. "I will bring the beer." The irony was not lost on me. The same pool that caused all the chaos, the source of every fight, every rumor, had become a symbol of calm. People asked to visit, not to take, but to learn. Some even said it reminded them why they moved here in the first place. One evening, an older neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, stopped by with a plate of lemon bars. "You know," she said, "when Victoria ran things, I used to be afraid to hang wind chimes." She said they disrupted the sound balance of the block. I laughed so hard I almost dropped the plate. She smiled. It is nice to hear laughter again. That hit me. Because that is what Victoria stole. Not land, not property, but laughter. And now, somehow, we had taken it back. But the truth is, not every victory feels like triumph. Some nights, I would still hear echoes, the splash of kids in the water, the screech of her heels on concrete, the slam of a police car door. The mind remembers conflict longer than peace. I would wake up sometimes thinking I heard her voice outside the gate, that same line, "We are all part of the same community." Only now I understood what she never did. Community does not mean ownership, it means respect. It means knowing where you end and someone else begins. One night, I decided to drain part of the pool for cleaning. As the water level dropped, I noticed something glinting near the drain, small, silver, catching the light. I fished it out. A key. One of her keys. The copy her kids used months ago to sneak in. The metal was corroded, worn smooth from use. I turned it over in my hand, feeling its weight. All that chaos, all that noise, All that bitterness, because of something this small. I kept it, not as a trophy, but as a reminder. Control is heavy, boundaries are lighter. Summer turned to fall. Leaves gathered by the fence, the air grew crisp, and Maplewood Heights started to look like the brochure again. Quiet, golden, almost unreal. But now, it was not fake. One Saturday, I hosted one last photo session. The same photographer from before returned, this time with his wife and new baby. As they packed up to leave, he said, "You have got the most peaceful yard in the city. What is your secret?" I smiled. "Learn to build better fences." He laughed, not knowing how literal that was. That night, I lit a small fire in the patio pit, poured a drink, and sat in silence. The flames flickered in the reflection of the pool, and for a moment I saw all of it, the fear, the anger, the confrontation, the sirens, fade like smoke. I raised my glass to the water. "To peace hard-earned," I said quietly. The wind rustled the leaves, gentle and warm. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. A porch light flickered on, and just like that, Maplewood Heights breathed again. The sign by the gate still stands, "Private pool, keep out," and below it, carved smaller, almost hidden in the wood grain, "Boundaries, build peace." Every now and then, someone new to the neighborhood asks about the story behind it. I just smile and say, "Long story, but it has a happy ending." Then, I look at the still blue water, watch the reflection of the moon ripple softly across its surface, and remind myself, peace is not something you find, it is something you defend every single day.